The problem with a really good chairman is that he sets expectations that I'm not really sure you can actually meet. Yeah. Shopkeeper, I mean, that's not necessarily something that I've been called a lot. But, so Amazon is a technology company, first and foremost. Yeah, I often jokingly like to say that Amazon is a company that is a technology company that just happens to do retail. Many of the things at the heart of Amazon is all about technology. The way that we deliver things, the way that we create recommendations, all of these things are technology driven. And probably if you've seen some of the platforms that we created in the past years, you know, on one hand, you know, a massive enterprise services platform which runs Target and Marks and Spencer's and Mothercare and many of these other operations. But also fulfillment by Amazon, where you can put your goods in our warehouses and we'll ship them for you. You don't even need to sell them on Amazon. Or the cloud computing business, the Amazon Web Services, which I think where we are pioneer and actually completely revolutionizing the way that business gets created. And people are capable of actually building new ideas. So my goal for today's presentation is to talk about some practical stuff with you. You know, I'm a technologist, I'm a CTO. I'm not going to talk to you about singularity. I'm going to talk to you about stuff that is real now and what actually drives Amazon. This is a famous letter. It's the letter to the shareholders written by Jeff Bezos in '97. We send it out to our shareholders every year still. And it's a crucial letter because it actually defines the principles of Amazon.com that are still valid today. There's one thing in there that probably most people know. It's where Jeff lays out, and that's the first point in sort of definition of the company, you know, that Amazon is all about the long term. And that if you are focused on really short-term optics, then maybe Amazon is not a good stock for you to invest in. But more importantly for the presentation today is actually the second point in that letter, is that we will relentlessly measure our programs. Yeah, and the effectiveness, we'll use analytics there, and we'll learn from those things that work and that don't work. Yeah, and so this is absolutely at the core of Amazon. Yeah, and I like to believe that more and more we see these same principles coming back in almost every company. And if your company is not measuring deeply the kind of interaction you have with your customers and then use that data to improve the interaction with your customers, you're missing out. And maybe, you know, you set yourself up for extinction. So core in Amazon is that we experiment continuously. Yeah, at any time, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of experiments going on continuously. We invested tremendously in building an A/B testing environment that can run all these tests concurrently. Because many of these tests actually may have to run for weeks, if not months, before you get an idea about whether this actually, you know, how does consumer behavior change? Yeah, some of these things may have immediacy effects, meaning, you know, when the customer first gets confronted with it, he loves it. But after 2 weeks, he's getting actually kind of tired from it. Yeah, and so there's so many things that you measure. There's something about 200, 250 different variables that we track in this A/B testing environment. And so measuring is extremely important. Yeah? And actually build a cycle, not just do things once and then measure and then have a yes or no, but you have to have an iteration on top of that that continuously drives improvement. And this is something that you see coming back in every business that we do at Amazon. Look at our web services business. We will deliver some of these cloud services first in a robust, but with a limited feature set. And then work closely with our customers to actually build the product out. It's actually, after we've delivered the first version of a service, it's the customer that drives how the product evolves. Yeah, and so learning is probably the biggest accomplishment that we have in this process. You know, even if products fail, and we had quite a few products not working out the way that we thought they were going to work out. Yeah, some of them you may have never seen because they already died sort of in the A/B testing environment. But there's other products over time that you know, have kind of disappeared out of the kind of things that we did at Amazon. Learning is really important because it actually drives the improvements of your products over time. And so this is sort of the, you know, if you think about the internet, Well, actually, so think about your biggest nightmare in the past. Yeah, you would throw a party and nobody shows up. Yeah, and so at the internet, it's sort of the inverse. You know, the biggest nightmare for most people is actually you throw a party and everybody shows up. Yeah, and then the question is, yeah, that seems like a nightmare. In essence, if you are all marketeers and media people here in the room, this is what you want. Yeah? It is, however, increasingly difficult to get everybody to show up. Yeah? It's no longer a world where it's just a broadcast mechanism where you can actually talk to everybody at the same time. So it becomes a lot harder. Yeah? In the past, let's say 5 to 10 years ago, if you would develop products, you could actually on forehand already kind of deduct what the success of that product was going to be. Today, that's out of the question. Yeah? There's so many factors, and I'll go into that in a bit, that actually are driving complete uncertainty. Yeah, so if you think about uncertainty, what are actually business models that work really well with uncertainty? It's actually startups. Yeah? Younger businesses, and this is a definition of a startup, that actually work really well in that case. Yeah? So a startup is an organization designed to deliver a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. This is sort of what we would consider startups to be. But I would like to argue, and actually I stole this also a bit from Eric Ries, the author of The Lean Startup, that this is not just for startups. Enterprises at this moment are in exactly the same situation. You can no longer rely on old techniques to determine, to say, well, you know, we're going to work for 2, 3 years on this product, and then we're going to launch the product, and on forehand we're going to know about the success. And that's no longer the case. Actually, I think enterprises have exactly the same definition as a startup these days. Yeah, so to deliver new products and services under extreme uncertainty. And if you have to operate under extreme uncertainty, you have to take a different approach to building your product. You have to get your product in the hands of your customers as early as possible. Yeah? Then measure relentlessly on what customers are doing with your product and iterate on that. Yeah? Well, if you look at, we often think about the media world as one being disrupted by the internet, the big bad internet. Actually, I think there was the whole pipeline of media actually got disrupted. It was not just the distribution area. Yeah, so I think it started off with the fact that we now have software available to us that makes everybody a highly qualified producer of high-quality content. And whether that is books, media, video, throughout the whole area. And of course, the internet provided an easy distribution mechanism. It still required that everybody had access to that same medium. And so especially in the Western world, I think that access is slowly, the universal access is slowly getting there. But that was not enough. It was also the fact that we needed new business models, new payment models, for actually new ways in which media could be distributed. And so this whole old world of being a broadcaster, where actually the owner of the content decided who was going to consume the content at what time, is completely disrupted in favor of the consumer deciding at what time, where and when and how they are going to consume the content. There is no way on forehand that a producer of content can already determine how successful it's going to be. Uncertainty here plays an enormous role as well. So if you have this uncertainty, what do you do? Yeah, so what's the best approach to survive in a world where your success of your product is completely uncertain? These are the sort of 3 steps, yeah, that I believe every company should adopt. Why? Because if you cannot be certain that your products are going to be successful in the market, you should get your products in the hands of your customers as early as possible. Yeah? And then, even if you cannot get a statistical significant set of customers to evaluate your products, even the feedback of the first 10 or the first 100 are already going to tell you whether your product actually is on the right track or not. Yeah, measure that, and then you have 2 choices. Yeah? Either you iterate, you start improving your product if you feel that that is actually a right direction to go, or you pivot, which means you actually still take the principles, but you turn away from it and you learn. If something is not looking good, pretty much after 4 weeks or 6 weeks of your customers using it, stop wasting time. Yeah? Actually move away from it and use your resources to work towards a goal that may actually deliver good products for customers. So one company that actually really went on to the experimental phase is the Telegraph in the UK. And this is a good example because I think most print media, your revenues are declining dramatically. And I think most companies, most print companies, are looking for alternative ways to actually monetize their content. So the Telegraph decided that they were going to do a number of experiments with their content to see whether that would go. And actually, this turns out to be a successful experiment. So what they wanted to do is actually have all the fashion content of the Telegraph Media Group being brought together in one particular location, fashion.telegraph.co.uk. Yeah, I stole these slides from the Telegraph with their permission. So that's why they looked at this good. And what they wanted is not just a traditional web page. Actually, they wanted to bring all content that they had, all high-quality content together in one environment. Yeah, and really make that environment special for fashion. Yeah, it's actually something that worked out really well and became to look very, very good. More importantly, the way that they were going to monetize that was not necessarily through advertisement, but through integrating e-commerce into it. So there's almost every piece of clothing, every piece of fashion that you will find in this environment is something that you can actually buy instantly there. Yeah? And so it was not just the fact that they actually started building an e-commerce business there. It turned out that brands, advertising brands, were suddenly extremely interested in actually participating in this high-quality environment as well. Yeah, and so here we have Tiffany's actually taking over a set of pages, Ralph Lauren, and a number of other larger brands immediately got on board. So the outcome of this experiment, after 3 months already, was actually that there's moments where they do more than 20 e-commerce transactions a second. They have easily hit 200,000 page views a day. And they are in this continuous cycle in building this product in the direction where their customers want it to go. So this happens to be a successful experiment. And they'll probably repeat this experiment with many other types of content. Maybe you can think about technology, you can think about cars, you can think about many other areas where a media publisher like this could actually reuse its content to build new environments. Some of those will fail, and others will be successful. But the cost of failure needs to be as low as possible. And for that, you need to already on forehand, make sure that you can actually pull the plug at any time. And so I think cloud and cloud resources play an important role in this world. Yeah, where you are actually putting together resources from other environments where you did not pay upfront for. Basically, you're renting your environment. You only pay for what you really use. And if you only pay for what you use, pulling the plug on something is actually relatively cheap. Yeah? And on the other hand, these cloud resources give you sort of an infinite scale environment. If you do become really popular, there is no limit to how big you can grow in these environments. So these environments, cloud and experimentation, are two things that go really well together. Actually, the reason why we developed these cloud services internally first was such that it could drive Amazon's desire for experimentation, where our engineers could very quickly deliver a new service within Amazon in an order of days, if not weeks, to get it immediately in front of customers. Yeah, Amazon is also a strong believer in sort of the lean principles. And I think lean is really what sits behind the popularity of cloud as well. Yeah? The fact that you should focus only on those things that really matter for your customers and everything else is not important. If you are in experimentation mode, you should only focus on customers. And also, so it's a matter of removing every kind of waste. Yeah? And especially wasting people's time is something that is really important. If you see that the product is actually not picking up the way that you would like it to pick up, kill it immediately. Yeah? There's nothing worse. I don't know if you guys ever been in a relationship, you know, whenever you break off that relationship, you always think, I should have done this 6 months ago. Yeah? Or whenever you fired someone, yeah, you think, I should have done that, you know, 2 years ago. This is often also the case when we kill off products. You know, we think, darn, we should have done that 6 months ago. We already knew that it was not going anywhere. Yeah, and so, you know, build an environment where actually pulling the plug is something that will cost you only very little. And a matter where, a mechanism where you can use these cloud resources such that you do not actually have any cost if things fail is really important. I think the other side, of course, next to uncertainty, there's a number of other drivers. It's not just the consumer power that drives uncertainty. I think competition is murderous today. I think there's a whole range of forces that are driving these new resource models. Yeah? So there's increasing uncertainty, yeah? But there's an abundance of products in the market. Yeah? And competition is killing. You know, take next to that the power of consumers, and actually the fact that there is limited capital in the world, that you actually have to use different sorts of resource models to start building your applications or your campaigns. And this is actually not something that is IT specific. Now, look at how education has changed in, let's say, the past 10, 15 years. When I went to school, when I went to university, actually, I got a list of 20 courses that I had to take to graduate, period. If you come to university today, you'll get a book with 400 courses where you can map out your own degree in a way that you would like it to work out. Which means that this is a nightmare for university administrators. They do not know where the resources need to go until the last moment. In this case, the consumer's power is the power of the student to actually decide what kind of education he or she wants to have. And so you need very different resource models if you want to support this. Yeah, you need to be able to acquire resources on demand, release them when you no longer need them, yeah? Only pay for what you use. Yeah, use other core competencies. There's no use in actually pouring your best efforts of your best engineers or your best product managers into things that do not really matter for your customers. And in all of that, you have to turn what used to be fixed cost into variable, such that the cost of experimentation goes to zero. And actually, so let me go back. Let me take a point here. I think this is especially important. So you can see how this works at an infrastructure level, the kind of area where these cloud services play. But actually, the cloud ecosystem has a whole set of much richer type of services. If you look at how mobile applications are being built today, yeah, so they all include rich media. They all have either location awareness and location context awareness. They don't only know that I'm here, they actually know that the weather sucks and there is no traffic outside on the road. Yeah, and taking all of these things into account, every mobile app needs to integrate into your social network. It needs to be able to get data out of the graph. It needs to be able to post back. You need to have different monetization models, whether that's virtual goods or billing or recurring charging or things like that. All of that is just the cost of doing business in a mobile world. We all have great, very high expectations of applications that are being built there. They need to be very rich. But if you all have to implement all these things, including recommendations and all the other pieces, you know, no application would ever be built and get off the ground that quickly. So what we see in the Amazon cloud happening is this whole ecosystem of very rich services that provide geolocation, that provide recommendations, that provide telephony. All of these, the whole range of services, is something that a mobile developer immediately can grab together. He finds the resources, the services that he needs, pulls them together, and then builds its own unique content on top of that. And then continuously monitor whether those services are actually delivering the quality that they want to. And if not, they'll swap them out for others. So that's already seeing where, because of the richness of this ecosystem, we see a wealth of new products being developed. And the richer this ecosystem gets, the richer the applications are going to be on top of this. So for example, this is an example of the New York Times. 2 years ago, just a sliver of their resources were actually cloud resources. These days, the New York Times, 40% of its infrastructure is actually, they drive out of the cloud. While actually only a very small percentage of their actually costs are going into cloud resources. Now, we talked earlier on about the measuring, and one of the themes of the conference is how to use data and drive data. And the point that I tried to make earlier is that enterprises, larger businesses, should look towards startups and the way that startups dealing with uncertainty in terms of figuring out what they should do as well. And so if I think about data analytics used to be the area of just big enterprises. Yeah? But if we look at the modern style of data analytics, it is actually the younger businesses, the startups, that are driving this revolution. There is no business being built today, young business, that does not have analytics as the core of their business. Take, for example, this is a company in Berlin, SoundCloud. They started off as a platform where musicians could actually share music. Most of those music was sort of in the electronica domain, but they grew out quite big after that. And they used analytics at the core of their business to help customers discover new music. They gave artists insights into where their customers were coming from, what other trends their customers were enjoying. And they actually had a product towards labels to tell the labels about what are actually the current trends that are happening in new music. SoundCloud pivoted, not in terms of turning away from their product, they actually broadened out their product. Instead of being a platform for music, they became a platform for any audio. Yeah? Imagine sort of the YouTube for audio. That's where they are now. But it does mean that their platform is going to be used in all sorts of unexpected ways. So they do continuously data analytics to figure out how their platform is being used. For example, recently they started figuring out that American presidential candidates are storing all their speeches on this platform. So when they recognize that particular vertical arriving, they immediately take a few business development folks, put them on that area, and then build that area out. So analytics is increasingly important in that world. And these are just a few examples, but probably I can make a slide with 100 or 150 modern internet startups that all have data analytics at their core. So Etsy is the marketplace. They obviously do recommendations, allow their customers to find things. Yelp is the directory service. Playfish is a very big gaming company in the UK. And Foursquare, of course, many of you know Foursquare as being the check-in service. All of these companies have data analytics at the heart of their operation. They all drive improvement towards their customers using data analytics. But not only young businesses, look at Channel 4 in the UK. Continuously gathers data about their television watchers, about how to actually improve their programming towards their customers. But more importantly, they decided that this was also going to be their strategy in how to address the second screen. They're looking to build a whole range of new products, assuming that television watching is not going to be something that people do in isolation anymore, but they will actually have a device of some form in their hands while they're watching television. So what should be the experience around that? They don't know. But we can start by just doing experiments. By bringing products in the hands of the customers quickly, you can figure out what is actually, how are they reacting to certain experiments, and what paths should you be taking. Yeah, and probably Netflix is a good example as well in the US. I think numbers are not really sure how accurate they are, but about 30% of primetime internet traffic is Netflix streaming these days. So Netflix easily collects about 1 terabyte of data a day about their customers. And then actually analyze that and drive improvements in their service. But what we should think about is not just the fact that actually data analytics gives you a report at the end of the day. It is important that these become real-time improvement processes. And this is core at Amazon as well. So many of the processes that we have at Amazon have become automated over time, completely driven off data. So for example, we used to have 2 guys that actually did all the email configuration and the way that emails were being sent to customers. And we were measuring this relentlessly. And they were really good. You know, it was really nice, increasing the line of their effectiveness. But at one moment, we saw that these 2 guys were actually sort of maxing out. And throwing more people at the problem turned out to not revive you know, the nice rising line that we saw before that. So we decided to go to a completely automated environment and completely restarted that whole environment. So now emails that are being sent to you from Amazon are completely algorithm-driven. Of course, personalization probably is the one that you know best. You know, all of your past purchasing, plus a lot of other information that we use to give you recommendations. Yeah? And this is actually a case, unless what actually McDonald's said earlier this morning, bigger is better. And why is bigger better? Because in this case, if you have more information, you can actually get to a finer grain result. There's actually many cases at Amazon where I can demonstrate that if you do not have enough information, you should not give recommendations. For example, this is a case where someone bought an oil filter, and we actually recommend that he also buys an album of the Jackson 5. Yeah, or actually here there's someone that bought a set of Japanese steak knives, and we recommend that he also buys Windows 7. There's an easier way to kill yourself, but so actually go into any of your popular web search tools, type in funny Amazon recommendations, and you'll come up with a whole range of really funny ones. All of these are actually driven by the fact that we did not have enough data to make those recommendations. Yeah? We should not have given a recommendation in this case. We should have just left it blank. But, you know, we are learning continuously as well. So this is really a case where bigger is better. Yeah? And most of these sort of big data problems that we're talking about, you want to collect more data because that actually helps you drive towards more finer grained results. Another thing at Amazon, which is completely data-driven, is our homepage. Yeah, so the gateway page at Amazon has a number of slots in there that a campaign can actually run in. At any time, there is about 200 campaigns competing for those 9 slots on the homepage. And we use a king of the hill algorithm to allow these campaigns to fight against each other to actually get those slots on the homepage. And then we measure relentlessly their effectiveness and actually allow sort of the popular ones to trickle up. And then periodically, you kick the popular ones out. Because otherwise, Harry Potter would always sit in the top left corner. Yeah? So you kick the popular ones out because they actually will be able to fight their way back up again automatically. Yeah? So make sure that in this case, you use data-driven automation, but you have to use smarts as well to make sure that you just don't use this in a very trivial sense. Although there's a lot of automation, something I want to point out is that there are some things where, as much as algorithms we have, there are some things that humans are just much better at. Yeah? For example, look at user-generated content. Yeah? If you would allow people to upload images onto your website, what you'll find is that people will upload any kind of image onto your website. Yeah? And let's say if you want to avoid that adult content arrives there, it's actually pretty hard to write an algorithm that looks at images to see whether there is adult content or not. What is it? Percentage of pink in a picture? No, that doesn't really work, probably. However, you can get 100 college students to look at pictures to find adult content, and they'll probably do it for free. Yeah? And so we actually built a system called Amazon Mechanical Turk that has thousands of workers all over the world, and it has a programmatic interface that actually treats human intelligence and human capability as a computer program. And so you can write a computer program that actually includes these people in there. And actually, they turn out that this innovation that we built, Amazon Mechanical Turk, actually has its sweet spot in managing data quality. Yeah, so if you, for example, to control data, I already mentioned user-generated data. Yeah, is this really a person that actually bought this product? Or is this really someone that said, oh, at lunchtime, I went to the shoe shop and I tried on these shoes and they look great? Or is this someone that actually really, writes this review from the fact that they actually own the product? It's very hard to do this in an algorithmic fashion. People just need to read this for 10 seconds and make an understanding whether or not this is actually useful user-generated content. There's many troubles that you'll have in actually matching up customer information in maybe your click streams with maybe customer information that sits in your databases. How to match up those things. Correcting data is important. Validating data. Is this really data about that particular company? Yeah, and then the enrichment of data. There's many data that actually will arrive in your doorstep in completely horrible formats. Yeah, and in this case, actually, we got information from a car parts manufacturer that is just plain text files. No metadata, nothing. And it's actually, for humans, really easy to go from that and actually create a rich database out of that. And this is also, one of the things that we've seen in the past, with, certainly these days with large media and content farms, is that, just doing simple searches on finding any, let's say, article that is about orange, yeah, will not necessarily all be relevant content that's really going about orange, because this is just a way of SOE specialists trying to trick you to get to particular content about orange. Yeah, so it is actually very easy for humans to determine whether this is actually an article that is really about that company or not. So, actually, I don't like the term big data that much. Yeah, so originally, a few years ago, when we started all of this, we were calling it data-intensive computing or data-centric decision-making. Unfortunately, this name big data come up, but it's something that has stuck. I think what sets big data aside from many other approaches that we've seen is actually these 3 V's. This is an article written by someone from IBM in the early 2000s. Yeah, it's volume, velocity, and variety are on other dimensions that we've seen than with traditional business intelligence. And this is sort of my definition of it. It's where the collection of analysis of large amounts of data to create a competitive advantage. That's really what we all want. We want to get an edge. Yeah. Again, we don't really know how to go from big questions to actually really executing on analytics. So again, here's the issue of uncertainty. Yeah? We see that in many of these cases, we have to experiment with asking questions and then quickly actually iterating on that to drive towards a goal. So, the experimentation in big data plays a very important role. And it requires an environment where you have no limits. Yeah, so again, cloud plays a very important role in this whole, in the whole big data business, because it's the enabling factor underneath that. Yeah, this is actually my technologist definition. I'll skip it, because if we think about that big data is only analytics, you're wrong. It's a massive long pipeline where each of actually the steps in this pipeline is where we have to innovate on. Yeah? We have to the way that we collect data, the way that we store it, yeah? The way that we organize it, the way that you do quality control. How do you match this up with other databases? How do you analyze it? And how do you share the results of the data? Yeah? All of these phases of big data require tremendous innovation. And we've only seen the beginning of this. And cloud is actually the platform that underlays most of this. So I actually want to close off with another 2 excerpts from one of our shareholder letters. In this case, the 2011 one. Yeah, Jeff just wrote these. Yeah, and it is, invention comes in many forms and at many scales. The most radical and transformation innovations are often those that empower others to unleash their creativity, to pursue their dreams. And this is sort of the core of what Amazon is doing at the moment. Yeah? We are building very powerful, say a self-service platform that allow others to experiment. Yeah? And so experimentation is extremely important. So this is what I want you to walk away with, is that in a world, in a modern world, where there is extreme uncertainty, whether your products are going to be successful or not, experiment a lot, and then measure and iterate. Because you have to allow your customers to drive your products instead of that you do. With that, if you want to contact me, this is my ID. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Werner. We're running slightly tight on time, so we only have the opportunity for one very quick question, if I could ask you this. We all grew up with the idea that Coca-Cola kept the secret sauce hidden in Atlanta. Do I draw the conclusion from what you've been saying that possibly the secret sauce of Amazon is the combination of human beings with the monster algorithm, or actually do you have a secret algorithm that'll do it all?
Actually, I think it's neither algorithms. I think it's actually the true value of Amazon that actually is our secret sauce. Amazon desires to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. And that's not a marketing statement. That is something that is pervasive throughout our whole business. At several times throughout our business life, we have cannibalized our current strategy, purely in the long term, with the idea that if we do the right thing for the customer in the long term, we will be a successful company. And I think that actually completely drives our thinking. Yeah? If an engineer at one moment has to make a decision that may actually cost Amazon money, but if he makes it in the belief that this is the right thing to do for the customer, he will never be faulted. And so doing the right thing for the customer will actually be the things that keeps your business healthy and successful in the long term.
Werner, thank you very much for that.